Greetings folks, Iolair here. In this video, I'd like to share my thoughts about the historical German commander Günther Lütjens, how to acquire him, his unique talents and buff skills, as well as my choice to place him on the Tier 10 heavy cruiser, the Hindenburg. This is a match of myself in the Hindenburg, obviously commanded by Lütjens, and I'm in a division with Salzmer, who is in the Großer Kurfürst, and Lynn Wilkie, who is in the Khabarovsk. This is a domination match on Tiers of the Desert. There are only 4 Tier 10 ships per team, and there is 1 Tier 8 aircraft carrier per side. Now, my build in the Hindenburg has changed considerably from what I used to run for well more than a year. So I used to run the legendary or unique upgrade in slot 5 and the range upgrade in slot 6. And I have a separate video that goes into that in much more detail, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. But with the advent of recent buffs to the Hindenburg, specifically her main battery reload, as well as the Iron Strike talent, which is the main talent that benefits cruisers from Lütjens, makes this ship very compelling to play, and I think much more desirable to play, and we are seeing much more frequently in games nowadays, and I know for sure that I'm enjoying playing her a lot more with this combination of the reload buff as well as the unique commander. So first, how to get him. So the commander became available in 0.8.11. I picked him up as soon as the release came out. He costs 175,000 coal and is only available in the armory. There was no event or anything to acquire him like we've seen with the other historical commanders. And there's been generally an opinion that paying 175,000 coal for a historical commander, in fact one that's only 10 points, when you get him, is a lot to pay for maybe not enough value. And my argument there is going to be, it depends on whether you intend to use the commander a lot. And I'm not talking about specifically for Lütjens, but just kind of in general. Most of the historical commanders are being moved to the armory, or availability in the armory, 475,000 coal. Kuznetsov, which is the unique or the historical Soviet commander, is available now for coal as well. I believe the French historical commander as well will become available shortly. And so the question really comes down to, if you are going to use the commander and leverage his capabilities regularly, then it may very well be a decent investment. And I can tell you from my own experience with Günther Lütjens, I have been very pleased with my purchase, and I do not regret spending the 175,000 coal, but it comes down to what each individual player, I think, wants to experience. So what does Lütjens offer when in the game? So Wargaming has sort of pitched this commander as being sort of jack of all trades, and he's applicable to any ship, or any class, excuse me, in the game. So he has 3 buff skills. He has a buff to preventative maintenance that reduces the risk of incapacitation of modules to 45% instead of the regular 30%. He has a buffed expert marksman skill, which matches the similarly buffed expert marksman skill that we see on a lot of other unique and historical commanders. And then he also has a buffed engine boost skill, which is specific to aircraft carriers, that extends the engine boost time of that mechanic on airplanes. And then he has 4 talents. One of each is intended to benefit a class. So the first talent is the secondary armament expertise, or expert talent, which is clearly aimed at battleships. And after 100 secondary battery hits, the secondary battery reload is improved or reduced by 15%. The next talent is the Iron Strike talent. This is aimed at mainly at cruisers, that after 140 main battery hits, the main battery reload is improved or reduced by 7.5%. And the next talent is the Exemplary Reconnaissance talent, aimed at destroyers, that after 3 spotting ribbons, the destroyer receives a heal that lasts 1 second for each tier of the of the ship and at a rate of 300 hit points per second. And then lastly, we have the air superiority skill or talent, excuse me, that's aimed at carrier players that improves the restoration time of airplanes after a certain number of rocket, torpedo, and bomb hits. So again, he's intended to be sort of this jack of all trades, and I think when the commander first became available, or was announced, I should say, I saw some comments about perceptions of potential power creep among the commanders, that was this commander substantially stronger than other historical and legendary commanders that were available in the game. But I think now that he's been out and people have had a chance to use him and certainly experiment with him during testing, that his talents are arguably in some ways weaker than some of his peers. So as an example, Halsey, which is the historical U.S. commander, after earning the Confederates achievement and activates the hit hard talent, the main battery main battery reload is reduced by 20%. There's an argument to be made that some of the talents, and that's just one example, but there's some argument to be made that the talents of Lütjens are to some extent weaker than her peers. But again, I think it comes down to people's individual play styles and how they like to play their ships, and and in general, the commander can be useful. His talents are clearly worth something. So if you do play a particular nation a lot, and you play a certain class that can benefit from the talents of a historical commander, then it is worth using that commander, even if some of the talents are perceived as maybe not quite as strong as their peers, like we see with Lütjens. So like I said, my general impression for Lütjens, I've been very pleased with my purchase. I play my Hindenburg actually quite a bit more often than I used to. She is still my most played ship, but for quite a while, I think she had kind of fallen out of favor with the general population because she had lost kind of her battleship Hindenburg moniker due to the rash of new battleships that have sort of very large caliber main artillery, like the Republik, the Kremlin, the Ohio, the Georgia, and so on. Anything basically above 430 millimeters can overmatch the Hindenburg's internal armor structure, which kind of gave her that tankiness that everybody historically has talked about, that has been kind of power crept. But because, again, of these buffs, and at least for me, because of Lütjens, this ship, in my opinion, I've enjoyed playing much more as of late, as I get the kill on the Yoshino. So those are kind of my general impressions for me. Now, I think there's an argument to be made that he's suitable for any class. Obviously, his talents are aimed at that. I think the player population that does pick up this commander, the putting him on a battleship will probably be the emotional preference because of his association with the Bismarck and the fact that he was commanding that ship at the time of her last battle, and he was the task force commander. So I can see that a lot of people are going to place Lütjens on the Kurfürst, or even just on the Bismarck, as history buffs probably will. And I think he can be a good choice. And if a player is very good at playing as a secondary build and can leverage the buff of the secondary skill or secondary talent, then it's definitely worthwhile for those cases. Now, a couple other places where I think he could be very useful. Carriers I can't speak quite so much to because I'm not a regular carrier player. And right now there's only one German carrier in game, the Graf Zeppelin. So if you do play the German carrier a lot, perhaps you would find his talents useful. I suspect that that's going to be a small minority of the player base, however. Now, the other place where I think that he could be very powerful is on the German destroyers, because I mentioned the exemplary reconnaissance talent, which provides a heal buff after 3 spotting ribbons are earned. And that talent can be activated multiple times in a game. So it has the potential to make a German destroyer very powerful, especially in late game if it gets heals, to be able to stay in the game longer. And I can't overemphasize the importance. Having your destroyers stay alive in late game is crucial, or often crucial, to winning, and having the ability to get a heal can be a significant benefit, as I get the kill on the Kurfürst. So I think he could be very useful for destroyers. The other point I should make here is the Iron Strike talent can be activated by destroyers as well. So if you play destroyers and do a lot of gunboating, and getting 140 main battery hits might not be that uncommon in a destroyer. So he could be very effective, for example, on a Z-52 if you do a lot of gunboating in that ship, and that's how you play her. So I think he's quite balanced from that perspective, and I think he's got a lot of good niches he could fit into, and depending upon how each player likes to play the game and their classes of ship, again, I think he could be quite suitable in many places. But I do think that he's extremely effective on cruisers because of the Iron Strike talent. In fact, when I put him on the Prince Eugen, I would say in about half of my matches, I will activate the Iron Strike talent. But in my Hindenburg matches, in almost every match I will activate, probably 85-90% of them, including the one that you will see here, I will activate it. In fact, at this point, I'm only 9 shells short of activating the talent, and we still have literally 6 opponents still on the in the game, or well, now we have 5 thanks to taking out the gearing. Yeah, so I will be able to activate this talent, and you'll see between the combination of the talent and Adrenaline Rush that I am going to end up with a reload close to 6 seconds, which is pretty scary for a 12 rifle heavy cruiser. So let me go ahead and transition to the gameplay now that I've been ranting enough about Lütjens and his general characteristics. So our team has a pretty good lead at this point. We do have a 2-ship advantage, and Lynn and I have elected to move over to Charlie as the stronger force of the opponents are actually north of Bravo, and they've sort of bled farther north. I'm not sure why. But Lynn and I are going to head over to Charlie, one, to try to cap it, but also we noticed that there was a North Carolina that has isolated himself. And this is the place, in fact, there is the North Carolina. This is the type of situation where the Hindenburg can be very powerful if it's allowed to get into close engagement, because, again, its internal armor structure allows it to mitigate citadel hits from calibers like 406 that the North Carolina carries, so long as she stays well angled. And when she's very close, within 4 or 5 kilometers, her turtleback can also help mitigate citadel hits, even when she's showing a fair amount of side. There I have activated the Iron Strike talent, and so keep an eye on the reload time of my guns as I fire each salvo. It is going to be fairly close to 6 seconds. I think I did the math, and I'm about half health, and with the buff, it's like 6.4 seconds or something like that. So it's very, very quick. And I'm going to be continuously toggling between armor piercing and high explosive, because the battleship keeps occasionally going broadside and then turning away and then going broadside. And so some of these shots are kind of a mixed bag in terms of their performance. But you can see here my reload is very, very quick. And we're basically, Linda and I are going to chew up the North Carolina pretty quickly. It looks like the North Carolina knows to at least keep his distance, which is to his benefit, at least in terms of surviving longer and getting more salvos off, rather than trying to close the distance with me. So we are going to end up winning this match. We've obviously now have a 3-ship advantage. Going to work on finishing off the North Carolina and then moving north. There is a Bismarck and the aircraft carrier remaining that we're going to close in on. So, in fact, what's interesting is the North Carolina elected with his previous salvo to fire at Lynn instead of me, even though I'm the one that's probably the bigger threat to the North Carolina, and he's going to have an easier time hitting me than hitting Lynn, who's going, close to light speed. So the aircraft carrier is sending some planes in. I'm not too worried. Hindenburg's AA is pretty good, although obviously there's a lot of controversy about the performance of AA in the current meta. But I'm not too concerned. I do finish off the North Carolina. Now I'm going to turn my attention to the Bismarck and angle in against him. Again, with the Bismarck's 380 millimeter rounds, other than plunging fire, I'm going to be able to mitigate these hits pretty reliably. So I have the advantage here against the Bismarck as well. And let's see. Yeah, my reload is below 7 seconds right now. I know that for sure. But yeah, this makes the Hindenburg very, very powerful. I am very much looking forward to the Mainz coming out, which is the upcoming premium tier 8 German light cruiser that's basically a Hipper class with Nuremberg guns on it, and with a base reload of 6 seconds combined with Adrenaline Rush and the Iron Strike talent, that's going to make that ship, I think, pretty scary. I did some math, and it can get a reload below 4.5 seconds under significant circumstances. Very low health, so Adrenaline Rush is really kicking in. And with the Iron Strike talent activated, in fact, it should be actually quite straightforward to activate Iron Strike with Lütjens on the Mainz. So again, very much looking forward to that. Earn Confederate there, get a bunch of nice penetrations, no Citadel hits, but we're gonna work on finishing off this Lexington and wrap up the game. In fact, the Lexington will go down before we reach 1,000 points. I also want to give a shout out to our Zhao in this match, because he was really instrumental in helping to control the mid along with some of the rest of us. So pretty good match. Not quite 194,000 damage, 255 shell hits. So almost over 100 shell hits fired after Iron Strike was activated. So definitely, in my opinion, a good investment for me. If you are considering Lütjens, I hope you find him as beneficial as I have. So with that, I hope everybody enjoyed the replay and the commentary. Please do leave your comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there on the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.